Dear audience, welcome to the show POWERchat. In today's episode, we are discussing about the status of human rights in Nepal with particular focus on transitional justice process. Joining us today is Mr. Bijay Raj Gautam, Executive Director at Informal Sector Service Centre, INSEC. Please allow me to welcome him. Welcome to the show, Mr. Gautam.
Thank you.
How have you been?
Thank you. I'm fine.
Well, you have been into the field of human rights documentation, working as the Executive Director at INSEC, a leading human rights organization documenting human rights abuse for many decades. How do you analyze the situation of human rights in Nepal at the moment, comparing it to the conflict-induced human rights situation?
First of all, thank you very much, Laxman, for giving me the opportunity to share some issues on the human rights. Talking about the human rights, we have to go back from 1990. I think when we got the first democracy, after people's movement in 1990 overthrowing Panchayat regime, then Nepal became little bit open to this human rights issue, and from that we became party to different national and international conventions, we all know. And after that we have a democratic constitution, and also we went to the newly formed democratic process in Nepal. But all of a sudden in 1996 we had a insurgency which lasted for 10 years. So we cannot say that, during this period, conflict period, we were not in the position to talk about that much of freedom and the democratic values on that time. So after the conflict era, now we are here on the post-conflict era. So when we analyze three situations, one on the democratic freedom from 1990 to 1996, then 1996 to 2006, and 2006 to now onwards, analyzing the overall human rights situation, we have to see these three factors. So on that part, when we enjoyed little bit of freedom from 1990 to 1996, when we talked about the social reform, economic and social issues, that was little bit a different time than of now. I say on that part. But from 1996 to 2006, we all know that more than 17,000 people lost their lives. Many were displaced, internally displaced, many were injured. So on that account, the human rights issues was different. Now from 2006 to onwards, the issue of human rights is different. So I always tell that these three, era of different time intervals gives you a different type of human rights situation. Talking about as of now human rights, you know that Informal Sector Service Centre, INSEC, has been documenting the human rights issues since 1992, and we came recently the Nepal Human Rights Yearbook 2020 of 28th edition. So coming to this point, we see always the upheavals of the human rights issues. So on this ground, if you talk about as of now, we do not see that much of satisfactory the human rights situation in Nepal. Talking about the previous past situations, dealing with the past, and many other issues remain unanswered. So on a nutshell, if you talk me about what is the situation of human rights as of now, then I can say it is not satisfactory to that extent what we have to enjoy and what we have to see the human rights issues now.
Well, Mr. Gautam, before I come to you on human rights documentation work of the INSEC, I would like to ask you on the, how do you evaluate the performance of political parties, since the signing of Comprehensive Peace Accord till that? Where is Nepal in terms of fulfilling its national and international commitments to different human rights instruments?
As I mentioned you, Nepal witnessed a decade-long armed conflict, and the then Maoist party and the then political party come to an peace agreement, Comprehensive Peace Accord. From that, Nepal entered into a new process. If you talk about the Comprehensive Peace Accord, some of the some of the points which were mentioned in the Comprehensive Peace Accord was to end the decade-long armed conflict, to make Nepal a republic state through Constituent Assembly election, and to make the management of the Maoist arm and its combatant, and also talk about the transitional justice process, which was some of the major part of the Comprehensive Peace Accord, to which all the political parties make their commitment to, not only to the Comprehensive Peace Accord, to their manifesto also. It was explicitly written that these issues will be addressed. For example, on the TRC process, it was explicitly mentioned that within 60 days of time interval, there will be a commission formed and there will be the justice process started. But when we see this Comprehensive Peace Accord after 13 years of time, political parties have failed to address the issues what I just talked to you. 3 parts were successfully done, like the Constituent Assembly was held. Even after the first Constituent Assembly election, which formed the Constituent Assembly, could not work, but again there was a second round of election, and then successfully the Constituent Assembly election was held, and we made a constitution which was promulgated by the will of all political parties. Then one important part was there was the management of the ex-combatant. That was also successfully made. But one remaining part on the transitional justice process remain unanswered, and still today there has not been effective measures made. So when we talk about after the signing of Comprehensive
That is about addressing the concerns of victims,
yes,
their families.
Yeah, concerns of the victims and the families. I think those parts remain still unsettled.
What are the key issues that need to be addressed at the moment that political parties were unable to do so?
I think it is the political will. Because if we talk about the Constituent Assembly election, which could not make the constitution as per the mandate given, and the Constituent Assembly was dissolved by the then government, but again the political party came together and they made their commitment to make the Constituent Assembly, constitution through the Constituent Assembly. And we were successful the promulgation of the constitution despite many hurdles. We all know that there were some hurdles from the national and some international factors also, but again giving priority to make the promulgation of the constitution, it was made successful. Likewise, the arms management was also possible. But talking about the justice to the victims, which were explicitly meant in the Comprehensive Peace Accord, it is not done properly, because I say that it is only the political will and the political accountability is there. If you have that political will, it would have been settled earlier, well, as mentioned.
How do you analyze the performance of transitional justice institutions like CIDP, TRC and all?
Despite the grievances, despite the objection from the victims, it has not been made. It is not functioning properly. We all know that the Transitional Justice, TRC Commission, Truth and Reconciliation Commission, which was formed a couple of years back, could not perform its role, and its term was again extended for under 2 years. Likewise, the CIPD, Commission on Enforced Disappearance, was also on the same case. Both the commission, what they did, they only collected the complaint from the victims. Like if you talk about the TRC Commission, there are more than 60,000 cases which is registered there. Likewise, there are around 3,000 cases in CIPD. So if we analyze the performance of these two commissions, they were mandated to establish the truth. Also, they were mandated to give recommendation to the government, and always the commission told publicly that lack of the law and also the lack of the resources, they were not able to perform their duty. That was their part. And another thing was, we as from the civil society part, we see that there was the political interference, like on the appointment part also there was some political we say that a quota or something like that, and on that ground both the commission could not work. Currently there is a commission established by the government, again from the recommendation by the committee, but we are doubtful that again this will end with the same part what the previous commission has worked so far. So I think the factor is like the commission's role, the effective law and the resources, and how the commission works. That was one of those factors made somehow impossible to get justice to the victims. That is.
Also there is criticism about the performance of National Human Rights Commission. How do you see it?
National Human Rights Commission is the constitutional body. We all know that it is the constitutional body which has the mandate to recommend to the government of the severe human rights violation cases, to make recommendation to give the justice to the victims and the punishment to the perpetrators. So far, the commission always say publicly that we have given recommendation, the government is not listening to us. That is one part. And on the appointment process, there is also the political interest at the National Human Rights Commission, which makes it's a kind of a paralyzed institution. All the commissioners, we sometimes get the information and the news that within the commissioners also there is no one voice, like one commissioners and these commissioners who are the policy makers, who can give the direction to the secretariat, and also the other commissions failed to deliver their performance. And as the constitutional body of the country, National Human Rights Commission, I do not see that much of satisfactory role which other state institutions, like in other part of the country, where the National Human Rights Commission plays a pivotal role on that ground. So on the National Human Rights Commission's performance, for example, on these commissions like TRC and CIPD commissions, there was a clash, all the time with these three commissions. The National Human Rights Commission always told to the public that the National Human Rights Commission could not get any kind of information from the TRC, whereas the TRC and CIPD told that they cannot give all the confidential and sensitive documentation to the National Human Rights Commission. This kind of a conflict was there, and National Human Rights Commission always told that as the custodian of the documentation, it was not possible to exchange the document which the victims has given to the National Human Rights Commission. So if you see the performance of, I just cite the example of this TRC part, and there are severe grave human rights violation. National Human Rights Commission is not only mandated to give the recommendation. For example, there was a case of Kanchanpur where a girl was raped and killed. It was highlighted at the national and international level also. Just going to the site and making the fact finding and compiling the report, and you give to the concerned authority, that doesn't make that much of difference to the victims. How you get them to the justice part, that is lacking. So as of today also, those victims are not getting justice. We can see such similar situation of the conflict era victims. Like if you talk about the Muktinath Adhikari case from Lamjung district, which was very well known, Maina Sunwar case, and also few other cases like Badar Mude cases. So these cases remain unanswered and unresolved as of today because of the, all these cases were handled in some point the National Human Rights Commission as well. Where are the, result now? We have to see on that ground.
Gautam, on the similar note, your organization INSEC has been documenting the abuse of human rights for last 28 years.
Yeah.
And you recently released with the Human Rights Yearbook. What is the key findings? What are the major cases that you have documented within this book that reflects that more needs to be done in the areas of transitional justice process?
We have been, as I said we have been documenting the human rights violation cases since 20 years of time now, and this is our 28th edition. So we collect the documentation from the field. We do not rely on the secondary source. All our sources are primary source of information. In all 77 districts, we have reporters, and in all 7 provinces, we have our field offices, and in central office we have the we have our documentation center. And these groups, these people throughout day and night, they collect the information. And when we talk about this 2020 information, we have collected around 6,000 human rights violation cases, and out of which 50% cases relate to the women human rights violation, violence against women. So when we analyze the 2020 yearbook, we see that there are more cases on women's human rights violation, particularly on the issues of the dowry cases, issues of the rape cases, issues on the sexual harassment, sexual abuses cases. These are some of the findings, and this issue is very much alarming. The women's rights violation cases, it is increasing every year. Last year it was less than this year. As I told you, the data counts to 3,000 in number. So it makes how we are going. On the overall situation, if you talk, there are 6,000 cases, as I told you, and most of the cases belongs to the disappearance case. Some cases are there also. The killing cases are also there. But on women's rights violation cases is more than the previous years.
What is your analysis on the role of state institutions, including police and all, taking action against the perpetrators in the cases involved in violence against women, be that of the rape or any other domestic violence?
In most of the cases, we have to see, we have just completed the 3 tiers of election, like the local election, federal election, and the provincial election. We have 3 tiers of government. When the case happens in the some particular districts, I think every institution has the role. We cannot talk, for example, when there is the case from the Kanchanpur, why we talk only at the national level? Why don't we talk at the local level? Why don't we talk at the provincial level? They don't have any responsibility on that, the elected people. So when we talk about the police institution, like the state mechanism, state organs, when a complaint is taken to the police, for example, a victim, there is one case on the yearbook where a girl was burned for not giving enough dowry from her family. She was tortured and she was killed at the end. But when family members, not their home family, her family members, her father, when they went to complain the case to the police, at first the police did not receive the case, mentioning that it was the it was no murder, it was the suicide attempt. So, and another factor, police always try to make both the parties, the perpetrators and the victims, to reconcile the case, not to go for the prosecution. So these things are happening. It might be the cases of the less of resources at the police institution also, but again the police institution has mandate to take the case for the justice, not for the reconciliation process. So we have highlighted this one on that part. On the national level also, you see how difficult to get the justice. For example, I talked few cases. At the national level also it is happening. The situation is worse in the local and the provincial level as well.
Well, Mr. Gautam, I'm coming back to the transitional justice process again. You were referring to some cases within your documentation, that of Muktinath Adhikari and all. What needs to be done at the moment? What are your key recommendations to the government so that the concerns of victims are appropriately addressed?
I think if we talk about the transitional justice, there are certain part. For example, truth seeking is one, and prosecution is another one, and reparation to the victim and institutional reform. These are some of the key elements of the transitional justice. I don't think that the family of Muktinath Adhikari needs some money or some ransoms. He needs recognition. He needs the justice. He needs the responsibility from the state. He needs the political accountability. Likewise, there are many cases where the victims have the right to say about their wishes, what they need. But instead of doing so, state is just appointing the different people, and it is making their own decisions how to resolve the cases. So for me, the most important thing is like take the victim together, get their consent, and get the solution on that. There are many victims, fighting for justice for more than 13-15 years. How long they will go? So it is again the political will, it is again the political accountability. Our foreign minister last week went to Geneva. At the Human Rights Council, he talked about the commitment on the human rights issue at the national arena, whereas the picture is different in Nepal. We talk about the transitional justice process where we are now. So these things remain unanswered until and unless there is the political accountability. Politics, politics means like the political parties who are involved on making this process happen, is the one who are responsible on doing so. So my suggestion would be, it is again which we have highlighted in our yearbook, it is the crisis of political will. Once the political will is there, it is not that difficult to resolve the past issues. For example, you have all the information, you have all the documentation, you have all the institution, you have all the mechanisms there. The only thing is how you process ahead. That part, if the political will is there, I think it would be resolved easily.
How confident you are, the human rights community is about the performance of this government or the state institutions, that they would work in line with your recommendations, what you are saying to us?
I think we have promulgated the constitution at par with the international conventions to which Nepal is a party. Nepal is a party to different international human rights conventions, and Nepal cannot escape from that accountability. Quite recently, there were a lot of consultation in preparation of Universal Periodic Review, which is going to happen in November, on which Nepal will be reviewed for the third time. From the first review to coming to this third point, I think Nepal has, for the third review, we have not got the report, but for the first and second review, Nepal has committed that it will promote and protect human rights as per the international convention always, also as per the constitution of Nepal, as per the law of Nepal. So I am very much optimistic on that part as from the civil society part, and there is no other way. It is only the political will, because Nepal cannot be alone and cannot stand alone without resolving this issue. I am very much hopeful, Laxmanji, because that is the optimism we have to always make, and I see a very, I mean, positive, days to come if these recommendations are taken.
Well, Mr. Gautam, there are many serious concerns on human rights issues you are sharing with us, but we are coming to the end of the show. Do you have to share to our audience anything that I have left to ask you very quickly?
No, thank you, Laxmanji, for giving me opportunity to highlighting some of the issues which we are working with. And again, we are very much, I mean, as a civil society organization, as I said you, we have been working on our, I mean, mandate, as per our mandate, and we always recommend to the government the constructive, we always engage on a constructive engagement, and we always recommend to the government through our documentation, and I think government and other stakeholders will take this very positively. That is what I can I can say on that.
Well, Mr. Gautam, it was a pleasure talking to you. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Laxmanji, for giving me the opportunity. Thank you.
Dear audience, time now to wrap up the show. Keep watching us. See you next week. Namaste.